If questions pop up, I'm going to put them on the screen. All right. We're here with Ashley Olson, one of my favorite people in the world, traveling superstar. She's been, as long as I've known you, you've been on the go. I think I met you through wheelchair traveling, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think like over
When
a decade ago now, for sure.
when did you start wheelchair traveling and why?
Started in 2006 and started it because the websites that I could find that had any accessible information on it were so old school, where you would literally have to scroll through every single blog post to find, information on traveling to Canada or traveling to, Barcelona. And so instead, I wanted to make that a lot easier for people. And I wanted to create a platform that not only that I could share my information, but anybody in the world could share information, because I knew I just couldn't go apps everywhere and cover everything. And we all have different interests and all that kind of stuff.
But that was your plan, right? To go everywhere and do everything in a chair and just promote, talk about the accessibility and
yeah. I do like compared to like what people say. I mean, like, yeah, like I do already have like done everything, but the list like always continues, and as access grows, it makes things more possible. South America is still this gem that you really have to do a ton of planning, or go with a tour group or that kind of a thing to get down there for the most part. So that's still this rarity that is still to come. There's still a lot of access that's needed down there. Not to say that it's not accessible, not that it can't be done, because there's certain parts of the different countries that are creating access, but would love to see more in South America. I'm obsessed with that area. In Southeast Asia, I absolutely love. Still have like a plethora of places in Europe that I need to go to. So yeah, it's just, if I can get down to Antarctica too, like that would be pretty cool.
Well, so did you start traveling first and then decide to build this site for people, or did you have this in mind? You'd be like, okay, I'm going to go do all this stuff so I can, show other people what's out there and how to do it.
It was definitely something that grew. I first became paralyzed and then was just learning how to put my pants back on again and that kind of a thing. But as I kind of ventured out into the world and traveled to different places around the country, and then had a couple of experiences internationally, it really lit a fire in me. I'm like, wow, like there's some big differences, just the United States, just in one state alone, just in California, Northern California, Southern California, to the coast, to the mountains, like access totally varies. And then the trip that I took internationally was to Europe. And after I graduated high school, went to Greece. And then when I was in college, my sophomore year, went to Berlin and went to Greece before the Olympics. So there was zero access, like
it's
absolutely
different over there. Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, like no curb cutouts anywhere, like nothing. And so that compared to Berlin, where there actually was some access, I'm like, oh, wow, like these countries aren't terribly far from each other. I'm still in Europe, like what else does the world have to offer? So that kind of was like the main, fire. And then I was just like, I need to leave like a path, for not just myself, which I wanted to, because every time I wanted to revisit a destination, I didn't want to have to remember every single detail about what trail and, exactly where I went to find all these accessible features.
Sure.
I just wanted like a list, just something I could go to and grab. So yeah, I wanted to do that, not just for me, but obviously for the next person wanting to get that information, to save them hours and hours and hours of research, or trying to research and calling and getting misinformation, and just allowing people to prepare for a trip. They have the information. I try to be as objective as possible, talking about what it would be like for a power chair or a manual chair, space wise, inclines and that kind of a thing. Just so you can kind of get an understanding, okay, I could do this, but maybe after 4 hours, I'm gonna need somebody to push me, or I'm definitely gonna want to bring my power chair, or yeah, this is not gonna be a problem,
right.
Just so people can personally prepare on their own.
Well, I know it's not easy just to go on one trip. I can't imagine going on several, especially overseas. I mean, it can be daunting, especially for someone who's never been overseas before, to have any idea what to expect when you get over there. And that's where I think that's one of the most important things you do on your site is give people a little knowledge of, what it's going to be like when you get over there.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, like traveling by I mean, I'll travel with other people sometimes, friends, family. My boyfriend's in a wheelchair. So when we travel together, it's like double trouble with wheelchairs, so it definitely like adds some more challenges, but it's fun too, it blows people's minds, and it's very rewarding in many ways. But I love traveling by myself too, because one, yeah, like it definitely opens up the minds of the general public about what people like can and cannot do. Gives me, inner strength, of course, and whatnot. But yeah, it's just like it's just interesting. Like it makes me feel like I'm like Indiana Jones. I'm exploring the unknown. Like what's around the corner? Is it accessible? Like is it not? Like what am I gonna do? Like it's always an adventure, and that's what makes it fun.
You're definitely an explorer, Ashley Olson. That's for sure. Well, one of the things you did that I really love that you did, and we need to promote on here, is your Access to Parks project. So tell me a little bit, tell everybody what that is, and then I'll post a link up either on here or in the comments about where they can go to read it.
Okay, yeah, great. So the Access to Parks project is definitely a passion project of mine. I grew up camping and hiking when I was a child, like before I was paralyzed. That's like all my family did on all of our vacations. I live in California, so we definitely did go to Disneyland a couple times. But other than that, like we were camping and hiking like every single time. And I'm so grateful for that, because there's so many different hikes and places like now that I can't actually get to. But I have that experience, I have that memory, and I can still be at that park and enjoy other things.
Right.
But yeah, so parks, knowing what I can do outdoors and nature, has always been something that I was curious about, and what I wanted to put on the website. I'm like, okay, what can I do outside? Like, how can I get outside? How far can I get outside? Even actually when I go to cities, I mean, I'm always looking for gardens or like, something like outside as well, incorporating with that travel destination. So I love the outdoors, love the outdoors. And sometimes I found, yes, there's growing amount of accessible trails and so on, but I found there's just a lot of inconsistency in every park system, where there could be like a little bit more information, or sometimes something isn't fully accessible, like it's not paved or whatnot. And they'll call it not accessible, even though it is wide enough and firm enough, and even in a manual chair, like you could push for a good ways as long as you wanted to. I would want to know about that information. And I understand why they don't put it on their website, because legally, they can't say this is accessible or whatnot. But I feel like there's a way of just like being objective, and that's what I do on my site. Like, okay, yeah, this trail is this wide, and it goes about this far. It's, this is the surface makeup, there's some couple inclines or some bumps or whatnot. And, maybe that will bother you. Maybe there's not, maybe that's smooth sailing, but you can kind of determine on your own, like if you can do it or not, just as I was explaining earlier. And of course, yeah, like bathrooms and, all that kind of stuff, because there's a lot of park websites that have basically like zero information. They'll just have some blurb about accessibility, some general nothingness, or sometimes they'll just say
parts, the bathrooms and
yeah, or sometimes they'll just say, oh yeah, the bathrooms and visitor center are accessible. It's like, okay, like we know that, like what else can I do? Right. But sometimes even they won't even say that though. Some parks won't even tell you where the accessible bathrooms are, and not every bathroom is accessible at every single park. So I mean, just like any other visitor, you just want to know those basic details so you can function and get around the park just like everybody else. So I've always been researching parks, and adding parks to my website. And it being such a passion of mine, I finally was just like, okay, like I'm going to turn this into like an official thing, like get the support of the National Park Service. And well, that was like the main one, because that kind of like covers everything. Like and start there and really kind of like dive into these parks and get, you know, really detailed information and create videos about them so people can really understand about what accessibility is. And then along the way, when I'm like going to parks and when I get to meet with rangers, most of the time I get to meet with rangers, but not always. And so sometimes I even get to meet with like a bunch of like different representatives in the park, which is really cool. And just kind of talk about access. You know, they're showing me their campgrounds, you know, and I can talk about kind of things that I've seen, you know, at other parks and what works and like what doesn't work, you know, and things where they can improve, you know, and how to communicate these things as well, where you don't have to like necessarily say like everything like, yes, this is wheelchair accessible, but like just explain like, again, like what it is, you know, like, okay, it's barrier free, you know, like, okay, like, it's this wide, you know, like give us a chance to be able to explore the park, you know, a little bit more. So not only have I like, of course, then been documenting parks, like I said, in videos and all that kind of stuff. I've actually put together a very detailed report on all these different findings that I've come across on my journeys, where, you know, I have different categories, you know, everything from like picnic tables, like bathrooms, you know, automatic doors, of course, trails and all that kind of stuff, different horse mounting systems, like all this kind of stuff, kayaking. There's just so many different cool ways to like do things and inexpensive ways that, you know, parks should be aware of. And, you know, what information should they have on the site, you know, like, you know, again, like language, and let's you know, be very helpful, like to have, you know, that wheelchair accessible symbol, you know, like at that trailhead sign when I'm driving on the road. So it kind of jumps out at me like, hey, yeah, like this is the one that you were looking for, you know, where you like pass it and there's no way to turn around for like, you know, a good 15 minutes or whatever, you know. You know, there's so many different ways that they can communicate what's accessible, like online, in the park, and whatnot, and then just how to make access improvements in general. Like, for example, I've seen somebody make an automatic door out of a trash can, you know, like flip it upside down, you know, like do the wiring all inside, like you have the button, like if it works, you know, like I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with that. I'm fine with, you know, backdoor entrances or side entrances or, you know, however I can get there, but just let me know how I can access these features.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's not very much. It just takes a little bit for them to do, you know, just a little work to make something accessible. Parking, you know, more, we could always use more spaces now, of course, especially since there's a hang tag epidemic, but there, you know, it's crowded at some, we went to one this summer. It's crowded. You have to, there was,
so I mean, like if you have to plan, and then if you go there and then you don't know what's accessible and it's all super crowded and you can't really see any signs or whatnot, like that kind of sucks. So we need to be able to communicate this information. Something that popped in my head too, like that I've helped parks, you know, that they just don't think about these things sometimes, that they'll make, you know, like these really beautiful overlooks. You know, they'll have like a nice, you know, wooden ramp up to it and a nice smooth, you know, little place to sit and stare, and, you know, little benches and stuff too. But then there'll be like a lip that's like this fat, you know, at the base, you know, where like maybe there was like erosion or something like that. And so like, and if the ramp is like fairly steep, even with a power chair, if it's like slightly wet, like you might not have enough traction to be able to get up, you know, up and over that hill, over that bump. And especially if you have a manual chair, like, I mean, that's just like, I mean, it gets in deep, you know, and I'm like, I'm really strong, and I've definitely struggled. And I remember there was one park, was it in Georgia? I think it was Skagway State Park. And yeah, they had a beautiful overlook, you know, that they had just created, and they had this one little lip here, and I brought it to their attention. And the next week they sent me pictures and everything too, like just, you know, got the guys out, you know, just had like one little piece of wood, you know, to like fix that, you know, at an angle, and boom, like 1,000,000% improvement, like 1,000,000% improvement.
Saving lives. You're changing lives.
Well, not that, but, you know, maybe improve, like improve the quality.
How many did you go to? How many did you hit in the project?
Oh, I mean, like I haven't counted total, because I mean, like if you're talking about, you know, adding state parks and like national recreation areas, you know, and all that kind of stuff, like, oh my God, like that right now would just be impossible for me to count. But I do know that I've been to, it was either 23 or 24 national parks. Again, that's not national recreation areas or wetlands or forests or anything like that. That's a separate, that's a bigger number. It's a bigger number if I incorporate all that. But like of the major, like 64 national parks.
That's a big number. How long did it take to do all? Did you do it all in one shot or?
No. It's definitely, like I said, I've been, since I started the website, you know, like it's been, you know, parks are such a passion of mine. I had been, you know, really aggressively reviewing parks. And I had been trained like really well. Like I had a really good mentor in the national recreation game. She has, her name is Bonnie, and she works for BORP, which is called the Bay Area Outreach Program.
Yeah.
And she started this site called Access Northern California, and like, you know, we review trails and whatnot. And when I started my website and was doing, you know, cities and parks and whatnot, everybody who I met, they're like, do you know Bonnie? Do you know Bonnie? Do you know Bonnie? And I'm like, no, who's this Bonnie person? Like, who's this Bonnie? They're like, you need to meet Bonnie. And so like, once I finally met her, I'm like, oh, I love you. She's just fantastic and has done such great work, not just parks. And oh my gosh, she is like a leader, like, and then some, like in this community for sure. Like she's was one of the first people to actually start the HOA, like all the sit-ins and whatnot in Berkeley, the 501 stuff. I mean, that was her and her crew, like the Crip Camp thing that you see on Netflix, like that was her and her crew, you know, like that's, you know, all those people, you know, so they definitely did so much. Starting a accessible dance company, but I'm digressing a little bit, but got to give some love to her and like everything that she's done, because she's just absolutely incredible. But so yeah, I worked with her doing park stuff, and then we also worked together doing the California Coastal Conservancy, you know, evaluating all the trails on the California coastline and whatnot. So I really had I had a good idea of what I was doing before that, but then after working, you know, doing those projects, like it was just like really refined. And so I'm like, yeah, I know exactly like how to put together, you know, these reviews and like what information to give and, you know, how to report on it and stuff like that. So
we're going to promote it as much as possible, just because that needs to get out there.
What's that?
It's one of those areas. I mean, I'm going to help promote it as much as I can. It's one of those areas that really needs the attention of, you know, the outdoors are going to be the outdoors. They can't, you can't pave over a mountain. I mean, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I say. Like I say, like, we're not looking to pave over the rainforest, you know, like we're not looking to like, you know, wipe out like all of nature, but we want to have some access, and there's reasonable ways to do it. And there's ways to do it. Like there's beautiful ways to do it that I've seen in other countries, and like a little bit in the United States, but not as much in other countries, where it's like by creating accessible pathways, like at Muir Woods, for example, here in the San Francisco Bay Area, they have a wooden boardwalk that goes throughout a big part of, you know, of the trail. And they do that so people are not idiots and wander off the trail and like trample on all the ground and ferns and everything like that, trying to get their cool pictures and stuff. I mean, some people still do that, but at least it keeps people on the trail, and it preserves the natural space so much more. And so like I love like that aspect in general. And I think that's definitely like a winner. I think that's super sustainable in so many different ways.
Well, let me before we get off of here, I need to tell everybody about your book that you wrote. I just started. It's called Confined to a Line. Tell everybody what it's about and why you felt the need to write this book.
All right. So in 2010, I had to have emergency surgery for a pressure sore. Excuse me. It was a pressure sore that I had for like 2 years or something like that. Super shallow, as if you were to like, you know, fall and skin your knee. Like that's how shallow it was. Like it was nothing. And like super tiny, the size of a pea, like, and it like looked healthy, like, you know, seemed perfectly fine, but it just would not close all the way. And every time I would see a doctor or a nurse, they'd be like, oh, it looks fine, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, keep doing what you're doing, stay off of it, you know? And it's like, okay, like I'll do my best to stay off of it, you know, as much as I can, like with life, you know, sitting down in a wheelchair. And so went through, you know, had that, and then finally saw this one nurse, and she was just like, like something's fishy. Like I need to do some more investigation. And she probed it and discovered there was a track leading up to my bone. And it was just like, oh shit, Ashley, like we need to get some tests. Like this doesn't look good. So I did some tests, went home, and then she called me the day after and it was just like, you need to go to the emergency room right now. Like you need to check yourself in, like, you know, pack like a small bag or whatever. Like people, like other people can send you stuff. Like you need to go now. Like we need to get you surgery like right now. Like, and I was like, what? And basically, yeah, the track leading up to my bone basically alludes to, you know, sepsis and like all these different blood and bone infections. And like once it gets to a certain point, like, you know, that's the end of it. Like
that's
you die. There's no reversing it.
That's how they kill people right there.
What's that?
That's how pressure sores kill people right there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's how Christopher Reeve died, and he had like all the money in the world. So like, I mean, it's scary. It's like, oh shit, like I'm not Christopher Reeve, you know, like, you know, so it was really scary. And so I had 2 surgeries. The first one, they debrided the area. And then I was home in a hospital bed, just laying down the whole fucking time for like 2 months, 3 months, something like that. And it wasn't healing at all. And had a nurse coming and whatnot. And then had to have another surgery. And that then led to me having to stay at a short-term care facility, which was basically a nursing home.
Right.
For 8 weeks because I had to be in this specialized bed, like this crazy water bed, like that has sand and water continuously flowing and whatnot. It's so heavy that it couldn't be in my house or my mom's house because like the pressure of it is just ridiculous. Yeah. So had to be at, you know, at this facility with strong floors and a roommate. You know, I had 3 roommates total, just separated by a curtain. You guys know that drill for those of you who have been hospitalized.
I've been in a ward before, so it's a little different than having your own room.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's definitely different than having your own room. Oh my gosh, a million times different than having your own room.
Did you have to lay on your stomach the whole time, or were you able to lay on your back?
Oh no, I was literally on my back 24/7 for 8.5 weeks. Like I couldn't even sit up to take a pill because I had to be straight, laying completely flat because, you know, they did a skin flap and everything. So, you know, they couldn't have me, you know, flex that muscle at all. They couldn't have me, you know, stretch and sit up at all. You know, that I had to lay totally flat to have that thing heal. So that was fun. And I'm like, okay, so, you know, I learned a lot of shit from being paralyzed the first time. And I thought that was like the worst thing that I had to go through. And I thought I was, you know, done pretty much. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Like, you know, maybe like way down the road, I might have something, but there's nothing I have to worry about, you know, anytime soon. Anything like this, of course. Right. So yeah, but I was hospitalized and I was really actually getting into meditation a lot right before that, which is kind of the ironic part of it. And I was like, oh yeah, I really want to go to like a retreat or something. Like I want to go to like some like really beautiful place and just like my cell phone, like, you know, put my cell phone away and I'm just like in it and like really learn something and like eat good food and just be in this beautiful place and like be like, I don't know, like this envision butterflies all over me, you know, whatever. And but like, yeah, be careful what you wish for, because, you know, God was just like, oh, like, you know, you wanted a meditation retreat like a week long. Okay, I'll give you 8 weeks, you know, here's 8 weeks, you know, and the package is not how you expected it either. You know, it's not at this beautiful facility, it's at this hospital. But I had all these like different meditation books that I was reading. And then my mom's girlfriend sent me down. She had all these meditation tapes that she sent me, cassette tapes. So when she sent it to me, I mean, it's 2010. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, I don't know what to do with this. Do they even sell like Walkmans, Mom, anymore? And so it's a funny story in the book, my mom trying to find a Walkman for me. But so I was listening to them, you know, spoiler alert, like she found one. And listening to that kind of stuff, and basically like everything that like these masters, like, and like, I mean, like Jesus, all these brilliant people that have come to this planet and like get it, like have said the same thing over and over again, like in different words, like in different ways. It's like there's pretty much like the same message, like over and over again. And my goal was to take all of those messages and like basically like implement them at that hospital, as painful and as uncomfortable like as it was, you know, because it's like, you know, it's just like, oh, like all these sights and smells, like you don't sleep in a hospital, like it's not restful. It's not restful.
No, I tell people that all the time. You cannot sleep in a hospital.
Nope. You know, like I'm getting sponge baths again. Like I can't even sit up, like to take a pill, let alone go to the bathroom. Like, I mean, like all these different things. Like, I mean, nurses like being understaffed, like having to wait forever for water. I mean, like naked people wheeling down the hallway in the middle of the night because there's not enough nursing staff. Like, oh my gosh, like just the madness of being in a hospital. For those who have been hospitalized, like definitely, know a little bit about that.
There's a lot of people who
goes down. So yeah, like I basically I was like, okay, I need to control my perspective, so it's like, and I did this before, like when I was paralyzed too, where it's just like, I'm like, oh, I'm paralyzed. Like this all sucks kind of, but it's just like, would just focus on like one good thing. I found like one good thing in life. Not in the book, but in a bigger book that I'm writing, there is the story that I call Shit and Roses. And it's about, I went through all these different counselors and found this one, and I hated all of them. None of them could relate to anything close to what I had gone through, like totally clueless. But this one guy, like he was this football player, like this big guy, and he had been through some shit, like some hardcore shit. And so I'm like, okay, I'll listen to what you have to say. And this one day we were sitting outside on our patio. My parents were both gardeners, nature people. My dad was a ranger. Also, that's why I, camped and hiked when I was younger and stuff. Sure. And he's just like, gosh, Ashley, the garden looks so beautiful. See those roses on the back fence? Like, God, they look gorgeous right now. The sunlight's coming through them and they just look golden. Like, oh, they're so beautiful. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know that's pretty, blah, blah. He's like, oh, what's this right next to us? What's this? Oh yeah, that's the bucket. There's a bucket of dog shit right next to us. Oh yeah, that's right. Because your little sister cleaned up the dog poop earlier, and then now it's right here to the next door. We're trying to focus on those beautiful roses on that back fence, but our attention keeps getting drawn to this bucket of dog shit that's right next to us, which was the key. It was right next to us. So as close as that shit is right next to you, you have to focus on those roses on the back fence. And that just like, that definitely was, in that time of my life when I was paralyzed, like that was a key popper, that was just like, whoa, like changing perspective on things and whatnot. So being in the hospital, like, that's what I did, I was just like, okay, like, what can I appreciate? Like, what's my roses, amongst all this shit kind of thing. And it was a warm washcloth. Every morning, like the nurse would come in, and like I would get a little bit of a sponge bath, but she would give me a warm washcloth for my face, and I got to feel that warm washcloth on my hands and on my face and whatnot. And I was just so grateful for that moment because it felt so good, and I would really tap into that. And, from there, like that was my one thing. And I kind of say it's kind of like going into like the dark forest, when something bad happens to you and it's just like, oh my gosh, there's all this bad stuff around me. I can't see any, like, the light or whatnot. And like focusing on this one good thing, like this washcloth was like the ray of light and like one ray of light. And with the law of attraction, for all you scientists out there, as it's just like that law of attraction. If you keep focusing on that, more of that is going to get attracted to it. So I was just focusing on that washcloth, just so grateful for that, trying to block out all this other like negative stuff. Not block it out, but just like not focus on it, recognize it, accept it, but just like not give it any power or like, emphasis, just being like, okay, yeah, that exists, but like, okay, whatever. And so I, just focusing on this one washcloth, like more good things, came in, like another thing came in. And then of course, then another thing came in, and soon enough, like I was no longer like in this dark forest of like, my emotions of being like sad, like that I was in this place. It's like, okay, like, yeah, I'm in this place, but like, I'm here because like, I need to be like, I hurt, like my body needs to heal, like this is a good thing that I'm in this place. Like I'm getting amazing care from these nurses, I'm on this amazing bed that costs like $10,000 a day or something like that, like from insurance, and it's just like, I'm getting cards from people, that love me. Like, sure, I'm not really seeing anybody, like I'm not really a part of the world, like at all. But like I have a window, with a tree, and I can watch the tree, which is amazing, and birds. So like all of these tiny little things, like I would just focus on. And it just became my world. And it became honestly like really fast, like not that hard to deal with, like whatsoever, like I was very excited to leave. Don't get me wrong. I was very excited, like, especially that first day where I was actually able to go outside again and feel the sun on me again and fresh air. Oh, fresh air. Totally underrated. I mean, oh my gosh.
It's literally like solitary confinement.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, no, exactly. So, I mean, that brings me to my point. So I wanted to write this book, about like controlling your perspective. It's not what you look at, it's what you see, and like the importance of that, the power of that. I was going to incorporate a little part of that into, again, like a bigger memoir book that I'm writing. But, when the pandemic happened, I was just like, oh shit, like you want a story of confinement. You want to be locked down. Like, I got a story about being locked down, you know, like not even be able to go outside and smell fresh air or like do anything, you know, like that's, you know, that's some serious lockdown. So, but there was like such, you know, positivity that I learned from that. And so it's like, the reason why I wanted to put it out there is like, one, to remind people, you know, to control their perspective, like about this whole situation. You know, it's like, yeah, no, you like, it's maybe you can't go to Europe and go hopping around Europe right now, but it's like, I feel like we've been given the gift of time, where it's like, everybody's like, oh, I don't have enough time, like for my kids, or, you know, to learn another language, or to like start to write this book, or to, you know, become like, you know, learn how to paint or play the guitar, or like, you know, take more walks, or whatever it is. Everybody says they don't have any time. For years, for decades, for lifetime, I feel like people have been saying that. But now I feel like this period is just like, okay, here's some time. Like you didn't want it this way. Like, I'm sorry. Like sometimes that happens, you know, that's just life, you know, like we can't control these packages and how they're delivered, but like, you know, see it as a gift and like, see like, okay, yeah, I can spend more time with my kids. Okay. Yeah. Like I can take, you know, like that walk, like every single day, you know, to like feel good about myself and enjoy some fresh air and just, you know, allow myself to like feel more peaceful, you know, and like, and grounded, you know, and whatnot. There's so many ways to like enjoy and like take advantage of any moment for like, for the better, for, you know, for yourself and the betterment, obviously, of society as well.
Everybody needs to learn how to be still. And sometimes you have to be forced to be still to be able to, you know, be there. You can be introspective. You can, you know, it gives you an ultimate appreciation for, say, sunlight, fresh air. I mean, that you and I are outside people. So, you know, when I was in rehab, that was one of the main things. They would roll people outside in the bed just to get them outside.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, like there's literal science like behind like the importance of vitamin D, and especially with COVID and whatnot, it's like, and everybody being inside and working on the computers. It's like, yeah, be sure everybody like here, like make sure your vitamin D, like raw vitamin D3 is like good, because I mean, not only does it help with like energy and all that kind of stuff, something that I didn't know before all this, that it also like, it helps you with like that deep REM sleep. So that sleep where you're like actually like really healing and your body can actually go into that repair mode. Vitamin D3 actually helps with that. Like you can totally look that up and, you know, ask your doctor about that. But I didn't even know that until like all this happened. So, you know, like, so like, I mean, it's so important.
I know so many people, so many friends that have had to go through the same kind of thing. And we always talk about it because I'm like, okay, what does it take mentally to be in your bed for a year or more, or just 6 months? What does it take to survive that? And thank goodness I've never had to do that. I don't want to do it, but you can never say never, because you never know what's going to happen to your skin.
Or I mean, or just like life. I mean, what life could happen like in general. I mean, like you just never know like what kind of situation like is in store for us. You know that song, there's like a good old song like from like, I don't know, the 20s or 40s or something. It could actually be later than that, and I could just be an idiot and not quoting that right. But it could be from like the 60s or 70s. But it's like, the best things in life are free. You know, it's like the best things in life are free. You know, like the sun in the sky, you know, the birds in the trees, you know, they are for you and me. Like it goes something like that. But like, I mean, it's true. I mean, like the best things in life are free. Like the stars in the sky, like the sun. I mean, like the appreciation of just like being alive. I mean, take that to like a whole new level.
Well, I know we went over the time, but we definitely have to chat again.
Yeah, sorry. I talked as fast as I could so I could get as much out.
There's way too much to cover, but I wanted to touch on the top 3 things, and we did, and we're coming back because Ashley and I I try to track her down every once in a while, and I'm coming out there to go zip lining. We got to talk more about your camping and all that, because I know you do so much of it, and that's an important area too. But I know the book's really important, because there's going to be people out there probably right now who are confined to their bedrooms or you know, hospital beds, and
I mean, like even just now, I mean, with the pandemic and whatnot, you know, like it really is just like a nice, fresh reminder of that's what I've been hearing from people. Just like, it gives you just like a good reality check on like, oh, wait, you know, life isn't that bad. Like what I have going on right now is pretty good. You know, there's still a lot of things that I can appreciate right now in my life, you know? So it's just like a good reminder, like it's like, yeah, we'll just be a good refresher. And so the book, I do have a link now on my website on the sidebar, wheelchairtraveling.com, for the book Confined to a Line. And it's also available on Amazon too.
It's always great to know somebody like you, especially, has gone through that and how you did it and how you survived. And, you know, there's always, sometimes you have to be down for 6 months just so you can have life on the other side. You just, you know, you can't let all that shit right around you get in the way.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, like I thought that I had learned like a bunch of shit, like from the get-go, like being paralyzed, but apparently not. Apparently God was just like, nope, there's the learning never stops. The learning never, ever, 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 ever stops.
You never know what can happen to you too. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chad. Love you and hope to see you soon. All right.
We're talking soon. Thanks.